Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of The Gathering podcast. My name is Mandy Balak. I am the president of The Gathering.
And I'm Owen Reader, the head of marketing.
In this conversation, we take a look back. We look back at the lessons learned from 2024, everything that happened behind the scenes, some of the themes that drove us, the challenges that we were up against, and we also take a look forward into 2025 and beyond.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
All year, behind the scenes at the office, the whole team throughout 2024, as we led up to the event in October, was repeating this one phrase. Anytime we kind of ran into something, anytime we celebrated something, it was like good or bad, there was this kind of like echo of a phrase that was happening behind the scenes with the team. And I think it'd be cool if we shared that with the community. What was the phrase? What was or what were the words of the year that anchored us to get to October in 2024?
3 words. Trust the process.
Trust the process.
Trust the process.
If you had to guess, how many times do you think it was said in the last 12 months?
The count is high. The count is really high.
High word count.
Yeah, and it was so powerful because I think it really allowed us to find so much joy in the journey, even when it was messy, and even when it was imperfect, and even when we threw things against a wall and they definitely did not stick. It was like, okay, we are just trusting that this is going to be a part of what the evolution is going to look like and what change is going to feel like.
Right.
And, you know, the road to the gathering is such a journey. And I think that theme really allowed us to have a lot of fun in the evolution of this year. The creative process is not linear, you know, change is really sticky and it can be really uncomfortable. With a new leader coming in, you know, we added new faces to our team, we switched up programming, like there was a lot of shifts and a lot of change, and with that there's a lot of risk and there's a lot of fear looking into the unknown.
Yeah.
And that mantra was such a guiding pillar for us. I think it was really powerful. What was your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can suffer at times with like wanting to achieve really good crystal clarity about the future before I take decisive action towards it. And I think at times in my career, at times in my life, that's held me up. And so as a part of the team, you know, it's such an interesting experience. Everybody's trying to work together for 12 months, super hard, all to achieve a finely tuned series of moments over the course of just 2 or 3 days. So that in itself is like just a different exercise, I think, to be a part of. But also, I think in the nature of the lead up to an event is such that you don't have clarity about what it's going to look like until basically you get there. Like you're trying to get more and more clarity through the year on various things and different pieces of it. But like I had no idea what Nikki was working on, and Nikki didn't know really what I was working on at times. And like similarly with, you know, Riley and the label team, the media and everything that's going out. So trust the process to me was like, I think, you know, allowed me to lean into trusting the team, allowed me to lean into the ambiguity that you're trying to erase gradually as you get there. So yeah, I found it taught me a lot through the year, and also felt like it led to a good result at the end of the day. What were you, like, this was your first full year at the helm. And I think that it's interesting to see like how a leader's energy can change a product just by degrees and inflections and that sort of thing. It was your first year at the helm of the gathering, but not at all your first year working with the gathering or experiencing the gathering. So maybe you can just take us through a little bit of a run up of like, well, what was it like over the course of, like, what was it like viewing it from this side, the side that you spent it on in 2024?
Yeah, it was such an expansive year and so fun to be on this side of things. I've been coming to the gathering since 2014. I remember I had a magazine at the time in 2014. And so I put a page of my magazine in trade for my first gathering ticket. Nice. Like an ad for the gathering in my magazine. And that was my first journey there. And to see, and it's been on my calendar every single year. And over the years, as I was building my team, I'd be bringing my team out. And it was just this annual sort of make it happen pilgrimage that I always was drawn to. And the relationships and the connections and all of that I built over the years has always been so powerful. One year, actually, it was 2017, and I was in Vancouver at the time, and this is back when the gathering was in February, so it was like winter, crazy storm season, and it was a couple of days away from the gathering, needed to get back. There was a crazy storm in Vancouver. All flights were canceled. And it wasn't looking like we were going to get on the plane and we were going to make it back to the gathering. So my husband and I, we commandeered a budget rental car, and we're like, we are making it. Like, there's this, come hell and high water, we got to get to the gathering. And so we commandeered a rental car and we drove through the night. We parked on the side of the road and had a little nap at like 2 a.m. because the roads were so aggressive and the storm was so crazy.
Just
white knuckling it. And, at some point, James hadn't been to the gathering at that point either. So he's like, are you sure this thing is worth it? I'm like, it's worth it. Like, I can't, cool. It's worth it.
Yeah,
and so we drove through the night and we made it. And we came to the gathering, and I remember sitting in the front row, and Matt O'Neill was on stage, and he was speaking on behalf of the Dallas Cowboys at the time. And unbeknownst to me, he was like, I met this girl, Mandy Balak, and he's like, is she here? And so it was one of those serendipitous moments of like, I needed to be there, and that relationship was, a seed was planted years before.
Yeah.
And so, Steve Jobs always says you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. And so when I look backwards, the gathering has been such an important part of my career, my leadership, like my business, my personal growth in so many ways. And over the years, as Ryan was tapping me on the shoulder, like, hey, you want to come over here? I was like, no, I'll just keep volunteering and I'll just keep coming. I'll keep coming. But timing is everything. And when I got my annual call from Ryan in 2023, I was like, oh, you know what? This feels aligned. And he shared his vision with me about the gathering really becoming so much more than the 3-day event, which I think for all of us that come, it is more than the 3-day event, but really putting some footing down in like, what does community building look like? What does the expansion of this really look like? And that was really exciting for me as someone who has been a community builder throughout my career to say, what could be possible there. So I think that this year, it's incredible to look back on where we were this time last year. And, I'd love to hear your experience of that too. But, this time last year, we were taking down the Illuminati.
Yeah, that's right.
Like we were rebranding and saying, okay, if we're going to become something bigger and if we're going to really get this movement moving, what do we need to, what are the foundations that we need to lay right now? And so the rebrand was a big part of that. Being a part of the formation of the inaugural Brand Hall of Fame.
Right.
Building out our core team, we went from 8 to 13 people this year. It was a year.
Yeah, it definitely was. Huge steps forward in maturing it. I think my experience with the gathering has been, I have been involved with the gathering since the beginning. And my first year I was involved as sort of like an insider who still bought a ticket kind of thing. But after that, gradually have kind of worked in different positions, taken on different responsibilities, just chipped in and helped in different ways, basically on, I think at this point, almost every team. There's probably some teams they don't let me touch, like production and those kinds of things. But worked on like a bunch of different aspects of the event, but never devoted, I think, the primary allotment of my attention and energy to it, at least not for 12 months. Like I'd be called in at the last minute, or I'd be working on something for a couple months ahead of it. I remember working a lot on the gathering music back in the day and our music festival, and that was always like a a push uphill, a few months ahead of the event, because that's literally when we could afford the attention to bring something like that around. So this year for me was different. I think taking a full 12 months, working with a team to bring it about, granted me a new perspective on just how much goes into the event.
Yeah.
But also, I think it opened my eyes to how many different ways we can make decisions to either grow community or stifle it. And always encountering that with the team and trying to find the most community building, the most community empowering and enabling way to move through something it was exciting for me this year, I thought. Curious about, from your perspective, outside of the gathering, looking in, so to speak. I mean, there's no real outside of the gathering. I think everybody who's been recognizes that you're kind of inside the gathering. It's a pretty open group. But, there's definitely a difference between trying to lead it than as opposed to participate in it. So what's the most surprising thing the most surprising thing you discovered over the course of the last 12 months? Or I guess now it's a little longer than 12 months, but.
Yeah, I've been building events for years, thousands of events, and I have never been a part of something that is such a symphony. There's so much, it's a beast. It truly is such a beast. There's so many moving parts and so much intention behind the scenes, which I knew. So much of the events that I built over the years, I was so inspired by the gathering. I took a lot of influence from Ryan and Chris's vision and my past experience. But I think really being on the inside and seeing the level of detail, there's 20 pages behind every little aspect. And, we have 3 days and there's 40 things happening at one time. And there's these amazing collisions that happen at the gathering, but they're all very intentional, right? We're putting a lot of intention behind making those things happen. So I think the biggest surprise for me was really just at the complexity, learning, the complexity of building this experience and the intentionality that really went behind it. And the fun part about leading an event is you can't procrastinate. There's no procrastination.
You're always late.
You're always late. You're never ahead. You're always behind. And we're always a race against the clock, right? And so, as we operate the whole year based on sprints and being at a certain place by a certain time. And so that level of discipline required it required a lot of discipline.
Yeah, from everybody.
Yeah, from everybody. Yeah. And so many moving parts, so many things that are really outside of our control. It's always about staying in control of what we can control.
Yeah, so I think just for anybody who's listening who's interested, most of the people I think that are part of the community are folks that are trying to do hard things.
Yeah.
And events are hard, but getting a campaign live is hard, or launching a new brand is hard, or getting a bunch of stakeholders and team members all aligned to a common vision. Those things are all hard. So what's the mindset, I think, that as a leader that you bring to those kinds of things as you handle the things that are in your control,
totally
managing the things that are out of your control, just to still achieve the end result that you're aiming for?
Yeah, we have to, it's about being grounded and calm and steady in the chaos, because events are chaotic, with a million pieces and people. And, when you think about the complexity of getting 65 speakers from all across North America to Banff, which is not exactly easy to get to, within 24 hours. And when you think about the complexity of that, when you think about the chances of, some people, whether something comes up and they've got to cancel, or how the road to getting those people on stage, there's so many things that can fall apart. And so you really have to refuse chaos. You really have to find that sense of calm and groundedness in trusting the process, but also anything is overcomable. We can meet it and we'll find a way. There's there's always a solution and there's always a way forward when you remain calm and grounded in that. And I think as a team, that was the mindset I brought into with everyone is we will refuse chaos. Like there is a way forward. And I think that prioritization of our well-being and our mental well-being and mental health is so important to be able to create that space for others, because the gathering is really it's a place. There's so many amazing things happen over those 3 days. People transform, businesses transform, one idea sparks a movement, right? And so to be able to create that ecosystem, like behind the scenes, we have to be really grounded in that. And as a team, that really starts with us. And then that always starts with the leader, is like, what is the energy that you're bringing into the team?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I do think like one of the challenges for any organization out there is managing the tenure of their employees, like trying to get people to stay around long enough to understand, long enough to take ownership or feel ownership of something and like to move it forward. I think the average tenure of a CMO in North America right now is under 18 months.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is nuts. If you think about like how much influence and power you give to like a role to, cast vision, build forward, and then be gone 18 months later, like how are you ever going to, as an organization, achieve consistent results if some of the most important decision makers and leaders in a group of people are swapping in and out of roles? And I think the same for events.
Yeah.
So it's like that rejecting. You can reject chaos, and I think I'm like firmly with you on that. I think I've gone through phases in my career where I've accepted chaos or even embraced chaos as like a mantra to think like, okay, I can move through this storm. I like the chaos and all that kind of thing. Yeah. But the evidence of it, generally speaking, is burnout.
Yes.
And or the results of it, I guess, is generally speaking burnouts. And you may have a threshold that's higher than the folks around you, but if everybody on the team is cycling in and out after 12 months or 18 months or 24 months, it's expensive. and it costs against the future too. Like it's like it's got a today cost, but it's got a tomorrow cost as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's not about necessarily refusing chaos, but it's like how you meet it and how you respond to it, because chaos is inevitable. And whether that's individuals that are bringing that to the table or, just a whole slew of events and things that happen or things that are happening in the outside world, but we're only responsible for how we respond.
Yeah. We're not exactly inviting chaos to the dinner table.
Yes, we're not. Well, we're good.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the future of the gathering. We're at the start of 2025 here, 2020 Thrive, as you put it.
2020 Thrive.
And we are on the countdown to, 10 months
280 days.
Just something like that, somewhere in that neck of the woods. Away from the gathering 2025. This is going to be another new year. I don't think we talk about change in increments. We don't talk about it as like giant 90-degree turns or 180-degree turns. But what are some of the things that are changing? What are some of the things that we're looking towards this year with anticipation and excitement? And can you just share it with the community so there's some expectation out there in the folks that follow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, we've sort of been talking about this past year as like it was the interlude, like it's the in-between chapter. After a decade, we've sort of found, okay, this is who we are, but then also we have to innovate. And so what does the next chapter of the gathering look like? And Ryan said it so eloquently on stage in 2023 is like, this isn't just the end of a chapter, it's the beginning of a new book. And so we have been writing new chapters, and this past year, I think, was the first time I personally really felt at the gathering that there was something for everybody, like really something for everyone. The gathering has always been about how do we, bringing together these conversations from the world's biggest brands and biggest brand leaders and them sharing their playbook. and doing that from stage. But this year we really started to bring in this conversation around, well, what about the leaders behind those brands?
Right.
And well-being and success, they come together. Like, in order to be the world's biggest brands and to be a really high performance brand, there's high performance leaders behind them, and then those high performance leaders build high performing teams. And so we started to think about, okay, well, what are the other conversations that we need to have at the table? The integrated self, like personal leadership, well-being. And how could we start creating these this space that it's not just about bringing the leaders, but it's also how can they create a bigger impact with their work, with their mission, with what they're doing, by bringing other leaders, bringing their team members as well, right? So when we think about the future of the gathering, what will never change is it's that, the brand stories, the business excellence, that will always be there, but it's more of an integrated self.
Yeah.
And as we're saying, we're a business festival. We're not a conference. Conferences are boring.
Yes.
Conferences do slideshows. Conferences sell from stage. We are not that. We are a business festival, and this is somewhere where it's work and life. It's arts. It's culture. It's music. You bring your whole self to the gathering, because when you bring your whole self to your work, you get to be the most expressed, creative, alive version of yourself. And that's what we need for more leaders in this world, not burnt out, exhausted leaders. We need fully alive leaders. So I'm excited for the future of the gathering, because as we step into this year, this past year was maybe 20% different. Started to feel a little bit of a different conversation on our stage. There was a lot of vulnerability, a lot of humanness behind a lot of the brands this year. That'll continue to evolve. And as we get a little bit more intentional with some of the amazing brand partners we're working with, and bringing in some more athletes, personal wellness, personal well-being, leadership, I think it's going to really start to feel like a new book.
Yeah. As I kind of trace the arc of the gathering over its 11, 12-year history, I think, when we started, we really had this this motivation to bring the best of the best, like you said, so that they could explain how they were coming to market in a new and different way. And it wasn't just relying on promotions and BOGOs and massive media buys and those kinds of things. So we were trying to say, hey, there's a group of businesses out here that they are accomplishing like incredible success and doing it in an entirely different way than their peers are. And that was like the first motivation and the first push. And I think it was by year 2, like you could hear it in year 2. You could probably recognize it in year 3, and probably by year 4, it started to be much more intentional for us to have conversations about culture. Yeah. Because it was clear, and when I say culture, I don't mean like the world's culture and the different subcultures that are out there, but I mean the culture of an organization. And it was a discovery, I think, that was made. For me, at least, it was a discovery. It wasn't something that I would have pretended to know ahead of that, just how important it is to have the team aligned, the team oriented, the values of an organization flowing out through decisions. I think the same thing about wellness. I think so it's still, we've always been around brand. We've always been about how do you achieve remarkable success in innovative and exciting ways. And then we started to layer in these conversations about culture. And I'd say, like, similarly, 3 years ago, you could probably hear a little background hum of wellness, a little background hum of like, well, how do you actually sustain leadership over a long period of time? And it's kind of come more and more, I think, to the forefront. And in 2024, it really shone out. And there was a lot of conversations where I think we're all recognizing, hey, at the end of the day, like, we can put a great logo on the wall. We can be excited to hear from some of these completely like amazing and aspirational brands, but it is still human beings that make them go. Yes. And we are all kind of on equal footing there, so to speak. So I'm excited to see the volume of that conversation increase. I'm excited to see more people come to recognize it as like a critical ingredient in success and sustained success.
That's it.
Just as I think culture has kind of now entered, I would say, most people's mainstream radar for like, oh, we actually have to pay attention here if we want to really win. Okay. So it's cool to see that take shape.
Yeah, if you're going to build a brand to last, you need to build yourself to last.
Yeah, 100%. What can we look forward to in the year ahead, and what would you like to share at this point? What can we share at this point to the community as they anticipate another great year in 2025?
Yeah, I think the challenge stepping into this role, something that I really think about every single day is, what does community look like for the gathering outside of the 3-day experience? There's so many magical things that happen as far as the relationships that are built. Like, we know it's happening. It's bigger than us, but some intentionality around our programming. So retreats, workshops, experiences, ways that we can take some of the brand leaders and the amazing conversations that are happening on stage and helping people integrate them in their lives and their culture and their team and their leadership and their business so that they can experience those results, right? Like, we can hear from an amazing brand leader who shares their case study on stage, and then that can just be like, oh, wow, that's a new way of thinking. I'm excited about, okay, can we take that into a really intimate experience where we're workshopping that and we're actually helping, apply that they can walk out of there with a playbook and say, okay, now I know the exact next steps. That's exciting to me. So we are really listening to our community, where I would say last year we started the conversation, and now I have phone calls every day where I'm talking to people that were at the event, and I'm really excited when I get emails and feedback and ideas from the community so it can help fuel those next steps. And we want to be intentional because every new thing that we say yes to also brings new challenges and new levels of complexity. Right. And we have to keep the main thing, which is our event. But we slowly will be starting to build out there. So anyone that's listening to this that has been a part of this community, maybe you've been to a past gathering, maybe you haven't been for a bit, maybe you're in the room in 2024, maybe you're thinking about coming, you're a leader who seeks to have community and surround yourself with other growth-minded people. I want to hear from you. Email me, mandy@calledgathering.com. It might take me a while to get back to you, but I love those conversations, and I think we're really open to that. So workshops, retreats, community experience, popping up in other cities, having little micro events, working with some of our amazing partners throughout the year. We're headed down to South by Southwest coming up in March, which is exciting, working with some of our brand partners there. We want to be always on. So we're just wanting to look at what are the intentional ways that we can start doing that.
I think about the the purpose of the gathering, our why, isn't just to inspire people. I think inspiration is kind of like half the battle of what's needed for better business and better communities and better industries and better practices. Inspiration is the spark, it's the beginning, but action is actually what's required.
Yes.
And so I think, the gathering is putting these stories on stage and celebrating the brave and courageous decisions that these leaders are making and illuminating a path to a different path to relevance, and a path to relevance I think that's has a positive impact on in the world that these organizations and businesses exist within. We really do think about how do we not just entertain people? We certainly want to entertain. It's obviously going to be part of the recipe, but how do we bring people to action? How does the gathering actually create a wave and encourage a movement amongst these business leaders in North America to build better businesses? Better businesses from like every perspective, shareholder perspective and fiscal perspective, but also from the perspective of the societies the society we exist in and the cultures that we inform and the communities that we encourage and those kinds of things. I think about the NFL and Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America getting together, and that happened at the gathering and happened because of this sort of cross section of different conversations that we curated. And the impact of that's not to pat ourselves on the back, pat those guys on the back. They're doing amazing work together, and they're scaling the impact of one organization that has a really great solution for people in need, and another one that's got incredible relevance and power and influence. And it's like, what amazing things can happen when you combine those two skill sets in with great leaders behind it and excited and engaged teams behind it. So all of these things I'm excited about. I think the motivation being that we want to help leaders be braver, more courageous, more successful, and more impactful. And so, excited for every aspect of those sort of little pieces of newness.
Yeah, and what you just said is win together as well. And that's our theme for this year, but it's all a part of our ethos. It's like, you can't do this alone. And it's way more fun if you don't. So how do we win the future, and how do we do that together?
100%. So we've got more content coming. We've got more conversations planned, but what would you like to say to the community of folks that are listening? What's your invitation to them?
My invitation is reach out and just start a conversation with someone on our team. We would love to hear from you. What's keeping you up at night? What are you thinking about? Who's inspiring you? What podcasts are you listening to right now? I'm seeking speakers and content for the stage, and so I'm really thinking about what are the conversations we want to have that are going to be most impactful. So please send us a DM, reach out to me on LinkedIn, email me. If there's someone that's really inspiring, I'll put it on my vision board and we'll make it happen.
Nice. That's awesome. You heard it here, folks. Make sure you take her up on that. I think all good communities, something we learned from the gathering is all good communities build together. And
Absolutely.
I think co-creation is a huge part of that. So let us know who you'd like to see us have conversations with. Let us know where you'd like us to turn our attention through the year, and what you're looking forward to in 2025.
Love it.
Great.
Thanks, Owen.
Yeah, nice work.